Welcome to another episode of Your Space with your host, Hannah Arinito. I hope you are enjoying today's conversation. Do not forget to check us out on Twitter at Your Space Uganda. Now, today's conversation is one that is going to take you by storm. And before we get into the conversation, allow me to invite my guests tonight to introduce themselves. Hello to Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. How has your week been?
Thank you very much, Hannah, for having me, and good evening, viewers. I am Patricia Chano Kiria, Deputy Inspector General of Government. My week has been splendid, and I'm happy to be part of this conversation here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for always being with us here. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. My name is Mutawaz Elijah, former Guild President of Central University, and a humble servant of God. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Elijah. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Hello, I am Samuel Abajo. I am a YouTube content creator on water and environment content with a touch of personal development. And I'm also soon to graduate in a Bachelor of Science in Water and Irrigation Engineering. So happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining us. I love how our panel today is very diverse, and I'll also be expecting a couple of interesting experiences. So today's conversation is around becoming corruption-fighting change makers. I know that sounds quite interesting, yeah? But I think before we dive into what it requires for us to become change makers when it comes to the fight against corruption, I would just really want to know what corruption means to you, Elijah. What does corruption mean to you?
To me as Elijah, I think corruption is abuse of power, of office for personal gains. Different people in different areas, in public sector. It could also be private institutions, universities, schools. Corruption is when someone or an individual in an office or any space you're running, but when you're using it for actually personal gain, not performing what you're intended to do, or what, for example, the money you've given, you're not fully dedicating it or putting it where you're meant to.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced any sort of corruption in your life or in your community where you've been?
I would say part of the experiences I usually see or meet is when I see a road not being performed well. Personally, not yet.
Personally, I've never experienced I think
Then you don't live in this country.
Elijah, do you live in Uganda?
No, there's one thing we need to put clear. We are now on TV. There are certain things you could. I'm a journalist as well. You need proof here and there. But of course, there are some cases you meet. If you want to go through this, you need to do something around Kitu Kidogo. If you want to enter into that office, if you need to meet this person, if you want to acquire, for example, your documents in this area, you need to do something around here. But also, I usually meet these cases in public spaces whereby someone is not functioning well according to the way you must have done it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Sam, I'll come with you and ask you what your opinion on what corruption looks like in Uganda is. The reason why I always ask this question every time we are on this show is because I've come to realize that everybody has a different experience and a different definition, which is valid.
Thank you, Hannah. Wow, corruption. Many a time when we think of corruption, we are thinking of stealing money from public offices, but it usually begins straight away from home. You've seen these messages going around on WhatsApp where, the child first goes to school and they give them a certain amount of money. They go to tell the mother that, they add like 50K. Then also when the mother goes to the father, they add another amount. So my first real experience with what we would call corruption essentially was in high school. When you would come to, you line up for food, right? And, some guys still give their friends fast. That's what they used to call it. So, and for us, we would be like, that's corruption. So it gave us at least an early encounter to really see that corruption is just using the power you have or the connections you have to get an undue advantage over somebody essentially in like already there is a system, there are procedures that should be followed. So by seeing that these people there are people who came earlier, and then you are coming in later, but you know you'll get your way. So when I also think about it in terms of nepotism at times, it is usually in terms of getting somebody who's your friend or your family when they are not qualified. So
What about when they're qualified?
man,
When they're qualified, it's okay.
man, we need to at least, that is the corruption, or that is the definition of corruption as far as what's online and what is the available definitions. But yes, when I think about corruption, it gets me thinking. Number one, of course, it's a sin because it's injustice to the people who ought to be receiving certain services. When you think about it in money terms, as I've started working, I've gotten to see once in a while, at least through the different times that I interact with money, you see that people will decide that they'll make a sort of deal with somebody and declare either to the client or to the bosses that this is a certain amount that was supposed to be, that they were supposed to actually do and get a certain good or service. And at the end of the day, they make a deal with one of the people involved. They get some money, the other person gets money. Yeah. And we see it as small, yet later on, that is how the big corruption in the country comes.
That's true. I've realized that one of the biggest groups of young people are actually very vulnerable when it comes to the effects of corruption. Dr. Patricia, how does corruption impact the most vulnerable, which is us, the young people? How does it impact us, the young people? Because I want us to truly understand what this means so that we have some sort of fire and energy to actually become active change makers.
Yeah, corruption, Hannah, has got significant effects on especially the young people. For instance, when you look at it in terms of service delivery, education, health, and infrastructure, like the example Elijah shared, you find that the young people are supposed to be beneficiaries of social services offered by government. But if money meant for putting these social services in place are stolen away, then it is basically brewing mistrust. The young people stop to trust those in positions of authority. If the people in positions of authority cannot be the proper gatekeepers and are the ones stealing these resources, supposed to put in place education, healthcare services, clean water and environment, water and sanitation, and so on, infrastructure. If this money is taken away by corrupt means, then the young people are the victims of corruption.
That's true.
And therefore, they are the actual people who should be at the forefront in the fight against corruption. But corruption manifests in various forms and can have deeply personal significance. And one of them is that issue of trust. It may present as a betrayal of trust if someone in a position of authority is abusing his position and instead stealing things for personal gain, using resources which should be used for constructing roads or putting in place education facilities or healthcare. He is actually a murderer, because if you're stealing away the drugs supposed to benefit the young people in the country or everybody else, all the citizens, then you're actually being a murderer. If you're taking away the healthcare equipment which should be benefiting the village and taking it to your private facility, then that person is seen as a murderer. So it can evoke feelings of frustration and helplessness, especially if it hinders progress, economic development and progress in a country. So you find the communities, the entire nation is affected. And then on a personal level, really, corruption may symbolize also struggles against ethical dilemma. Hannah, today we deal with so many ethical dilemmas in everyday life, which prompts us to reflect on the values. What are the principles and values we stand for? What are the national values we have in this country? And this takes us to our usual conversation of projecting the issues to do with the national values and letting everybody know that we have national values and we need to uphold these values, we need to promote these values, we need to be leaders who are exemplary so that we deal with this problem of corruption in our country.
I think that has given us a very clear, distinct picture of what this world can look like for you and me. Sam, what do you think should be the main drive for young people to start actively becoming change makers when it comes to the fight against corruption? What should be that driving force? Maybe you could also share what yours is.
Wow, corruption. We know when you say driving force and you say fighters of corruption, I think to ourselves like, we'll come with knives and spears and really attack this corruption thing. But many a time, since it's something based on values and it's not something tangible, and you think about how you're going to fight something that
You can't see.
yeah,
physically.
something that you can't see. So eventually, as Doctor has mentioned, it comes down really to values. And most of those, as I've said, begin from when we are young. What are we showing and what are we sharing with people? Many a time we hear some of our friends saying that, once we also get those positions like this,
We shall show them.
we shall compensate for all our suffering. Yeah, but many a time I think to myself, if we do not have a relationship with the people if we don't have the relationship with people whom we are serving, then it's a lot easier for us to steal from them, to not care what happens to them.
That's true.
So usually I think of it as have a relationship with the people that you are serving. When you know their needs, when you know their aspirations, you find yourself you want what's best for them. And to me that helps me. That really drives me so many times. And I think since we've grown up being raised in Christian values, Christian families, where we're being taught it's in the Bible, and essentially it's about having a relationship with Christ. Since it's somebody who wanted justice, it's also hurting our relationship if we are doing things that are related to injustice.
That's true. What about you, Elijah? What do you think should be the driving force for young people when it comes to the fight against corruption? And especially because I think that you've been a guild president for St. Lawrence University. You've experienced that level of power and all these different things. What do you think should be the driving force in regards to this?
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, I was a guild president, but also I'm a former UNSA presidential aspirant.
Yes.
And also, and also have been a leader of government business in the 5th National Youth Parliament of Uganda.
Politician.
Yes. So I am a servant of God as well, and I've also experienced leadership at the same time, and still.
That must be tough. Being a man of God and also
Now, of course, there is that issue of accountability that comes in that area there. So there's something I want to share with you. As young people, one of the things that should drive us is the future. The future belongs to us. If we do not position well our communities, then we are missing out the point. Yes, we have leaders in places, but 20, 30 years, they may not be there. We might be in their positions, or we could be the parents of tomorrow. How are we preparing for our children? Are we also, because it's now becoming a trend and it's becoming the discipline, corruption. After now, I also go there and also chip in. Yesterday we had a conversation there with some gentlemen at campus, and I was saying, if I only get like 5 billions like this,
What?
I also get there and I get it, they will feel me. You get the point? So young people are having that mindset. And I was like, no. That should not be the way to go. We should love the country. We should love and believe that the future is ours. So one of the things that could motivate me and motivates me to fight this is the future. Yeah, and also, just as you mentioned, prayer. Actually, me, I started. Every week, at least, I find it and go to prayer mountain. As I'm praying for myself, I need to pray for Uganda, because if Uganda is not corruption-free, then I'm not
You're
going
missing
to be
out.
well. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Dr. Patricia, we've now listened from the young people about why the future is important. I feel like because you're currently in a position of leadership and power, we need to hear from you why this future that you people keep telling us about is important. Because honestly, ever since I was a child, they keep saying, you are the future, you are the future. We've not really understood what that you are the future is. Let's take a break. We're going to be right back. Welcome back from that mini break. You are still here on Your Space with your host, Hannah Arinite. We're still having conversations about what it takes for you to become a change maker when it comes to the fight against corruption. Dr. Patricia, our question still stands as young people. Give us an understanding of what this future is What does it
Thank
really
you.
look like?
Thank you very much, Hannah. And that's a very brilliant question. As young people, I have always said that you are the heartbeat of this country. Recently, there was a population census, and the majority of the population are actually the young people. The old people our version will get phased out. But while we are here, we have a responsibility of nurturing, of mentoring, of coaching, and preparing the young people to take responsibility, because time is passing, and as time passes, we age and retire and go, and then the young ones come, just like we were also young not very, very long ago. So for me, I think the values and principles regarding corruption is what we need to talk more about. What are those values I believe in as Patricia? What is that propelling force that keeps me on the steering, saying, I'm going to take charge of this war against corruption? Because my values and principles, first of all, regarding corruption, shapes my understanding and approach to the problem. One, there is integrity. I believe that honesty and moral uprightness is something which is a guiding principle. They are very essential, especially in all our dealings. If you're honest and upright in all your dealings, then corruption will not be heard of. And this principle drives my stance against any form of dishonesty or misconduct. So when you hear me making statements out there and sanctioning arrests for people who have been dishonest, people who have compromised standards, it is the value of integrity. Then transparency. I value openness and accountability in governance and business practices. I believe accountability begins with me.
Yes.
And I know that if I pass this on to the younger generation, there will be harmony. This whole thing about corruption, when there's accountability, when people can demand for accountability from an informed perspective, then they are understanding their responsibility and role. So I advocate for clear communication, disclosure of information, to ensure that decisions are made ethically and responsibly. That's why when I go to local government and engage with people at the grassroots, I tell them, please, the ordinary Ugandan wants accountability. If you have gotten a release or government of Uganda has sent money to your district, communicate, put it on the notice board so that people get to know that these are the priorities of Sembabule. These are the priorities of Kaberamaido. This is what they are going to do during this quarter. They're going to construct schools, they're going to do roads, they're going to do boreholes, and people, the ordinary person, will get to benefit. Communication and transparency. Secondly, I also believe in justice. Justice and honesty, justice and holiness, justice and truthfulness. Because for the decisions I take, I have to think about the fact that it was fair and it was just. My strong belief in fairness and justice basically underpins my views on corruption. And I believe if the young people pick a leaf from this, especially the young leaders in institutions now, because institutions are the training ground, they will be the best leaders this country have had. And I feel that everyone, regardless of their status, should be held accountable for their actions, and that corruption undermines the principles of equal treatment, and also it undermines the truthfulness and other principles. Recently, I needed my permit renewed, and I thought it had just expired last year, but it had expired in 2022. So I went to the organization that does the renewal, and they told me, no, you have to go back to Naguru, go and do the driving test and what.
Again. Okay.
So I went and did that. I was given a very old car to drive around and do box parking and reverse it, and it was a very, very wonderful experience. And the people, the management there said, but you're a different leader. The other executives don't come here. Yes. We don't know why they're driving. They don't have permits. Why don't they come and also do this? But you are different and exemplary. And you should pass a message to your colleagues in those positions that no matter what position or status, you need to come down and display
Humility.
humility and exemplariness. Then social responsibility. I recognize that individuals and organizations have a duty to contribute to their community, to their society. Some people say, no, government has to do it all. But what is your contribution? So I think as young people, we need to embrace that heart of service. I am one person who is born again, I give offertory in church, but I also have social responsibility through Rotary, through Rotaract. I am a Rotarian who is also a Lion. I belong to Lions Club and Rotary. Why? Because of these social responsibility things, we have to give service beyond self. And this principle drives my commitment even to fight corruption and to promote ethical behavior in the community among the people. Yes.
I really love that example. I think also humility is one of those very key aspects and values that we need, because when the pride and arrogance kicks in, you start to feel that you're untouchable, right? Sam, as we come to a bit of a conclusion now, what easy steps can one take on to become a change maker today? I don't want us to talk about all these big things, but now on ground, after watching this show, what steps can somebody take?
Yes, thank you so much, Hannah. I've been listening to a common theme that has been said so much, accountability. And many a time we dread it. We think, there's someone going to come and start quizzing you about these things. But accountability begins in friendships, as I have said it from the beginning. When you are, first of all, accountable to your friends, even if you have fallen victim to being corrupt before, it doesn't mean that you can't be uncorrupt tomorrow. That's one thing. Then also, when I think of how we can navigate these things of corruption, corruption usually happens so much, like corruption to me generally is sin. And sin and corruption usually happen very well in the darkness. So when it's brought to light, first of all, people shouldn't think that we are few people who want to fight corruption. We are actually many. We are many people. So when people know very well that we are many, you are inspired to come together with those people who want to fight corruption. You to be accountable to them. The times you fall, the times they fall, bring them back. And then when you see it happening, it's important to talk about it even from the very beginning, from the get-go. When you join an institution, that here we're not people who are about corruption. We want the service of the people. So I'll just end by saying, always think about the next person. Really think about how they are doing. Look at them as a human being. They have a family, all those things. And it will always take you away from being corrupt and instead to servant leadership.
I love that, servant leadership. As we come to a conclusion, Elijah, how can somebody who is watching, now I want this to go to the young youth leaders, as somebody that is watching, how can they be able to stand and mobilize other youth change makers when it comes to the fight against corruption? You've done it. Share with the rest of the world how they can also take on action.
Thank you, Hannah. As I was speaking earlier on, corruption, we should not just see it as a small thing. It is one of those big diseases that is actually affecting our country. Actually, I was reading something, and it was saying that 25%, Uganda was at 25% in 2022, in fighting corruption, 25%, and it was the lowest in East Africa. Meaning it is affecting even the very common Ugandan, who is very far in Kabelamaido, as the doctor said. So we need to fight corruption as young people. How? One, it starts with me as a leader, as a guild president. I need to make sure that the accountability given is actually pure. We organize Freshers Ball and all that. You're the next president, you're the next MP. But if you actually don't table this well, if you don't align yourself well, if you don't be an example, just like Dr. has shared about licensing, I also went there, and that is so humbling if you really, really did that. That's so beautiful. It's a good example. So if doctor could go there, how about you, the young person? So we need to be an example in that space. And also too, I would say that as young people, we need to engage in community work. We need to engage local leaders, be part of it. I stay in Zambia. How do I join the community? For example, there is information I know. And as Elijah, if I join the leaders, the LC people, the women counselors and all that, they usually have those meetings. I visit them and I share the little knowledge that I have.
Would be unstoppable, surely.
And that can drive a change. Earlier, some time back, I think it was in 2020.
As we come to our conclusion, because our time is fast spent.
All right,
yes,
thank you.
yes. Just make it fast.
Okay, I wanted to share something because we hold a petition against the ECOP, something they were trying to fight ECOP. And I was among the people that were holding that petition. I believe that young people can actually drive change. If we actually did that, took that petition to
and it went through.
And it went through, I believe that still it can also work. And also, government should also engage or bring out these procurement processes into public. People to know that the government is going to do this so that people can follow up. Young people these days are very sober and also very sensitive. And young people can also develop apps that can really be told, no, government procured this and it's falling into this place and that.
That's true. All right. Our time is really fast spent. Dr. Patricia, in just 3 words, how can we be able to move forward?
I would like to agree with Elijah and Samuel for what they have submitted, but I also would like to add my voice to encourage active participation, civic engagement, especially in public affairs. When the young people get to engage in public affairs now, then they are able to do advocacy and awareness. They are able to reach out and promote integrity among the young people out there. And then to look at the long-term vision. And what is a long-term vision? Prioritize long-term solutions over the short-term gains. Sometimes for me, I've decided to look at advocating for systemic changes that address root causes rather than treating symptoms. So when the young people embody some of these values and principles, then they're able to contribute to that culture of integrity, of accountability by eliminating some of those actions and beliefs which create a negative impact out there. So it's about participation. Young people, you're encouraged to be part of the war against corruption. You could tweet or text something that will cause a significant impact. Like the other story I shared with you, Hannah, of someone who just took a picture, a recording of what was happening in CAA and shared, and we took interest and engaged with CAA, and whoever was it taking bribes is now out of job, and that problem has been treated. Yes, we've engaged with CAA during boardroom sessions, and things have improved a lot at the airport today. Right. Yes.
We've had a very, very interesting conversation. Unfortunately, it has come to an end, but we can still have the conversation further on our Twitter space at Your Space Uganda. Thank you so much for watching. Au revoir.